I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. Such a pleasure to be able to speak to you. Thanks a lot for taking the time. Maybe for people who don't know anything about the series, you can give us a brief intro. What can they expect going in?
Well, out there, it's a new thriller, a new sort of drama thriller, starring Martin Clunes and myself, and many other fantastic people. And it's about a father and son who live on a farm on the Welsh border, and they've just lost their mother. And amongst that, they're both sort of going through their own, personal stuff and trying to get over that. So at the start, we see them, getting on with their life. My character, Johnny Williams, he gets involved with a couple of his friends in certain dodgy dealings. He's asked to mind a package, and sort of he basically gets tricked into this system of lies about a package, and he thinks that he's lost it. And from then on, it sort of catapults into more and more sort of dodgy dealings, and then you see a lot of it's sort of the catalyst is that he's tricked into thinking that he's lost his package. So yeah, it's about county lines. It's about but it's also about how county lines affects communities, and it's much more than just a show about county lines. It's about how it affects not just our family, but about the people in these small communities.
It's so funny because I guess in a way it's still quite a new phenomenon, this sort of county lines trafficking. And I realised there's not been that many series that try to address it or delve into it. I mean, how much did you know about this as kind of a concept or something that's happening? And was it something you had to kind of go and research, I guess, to kind of understand exactly? I mean, even the police, I think, are still catching up to what it really means or how to really control it or stop it. So is it something you have
Yeah,
to kind of go and research a bit?
definitely. Yeah. I mean, you're right. There aren't many series or sort of films about county lines, because I think because it's quite, like you say, it's quite unexplored. And I think, like you said, the police are sort of, they're still trying to figure out how it works. But I've heard things about it, and I know that it's quite prominent now. I looked into certain cases up and down the country, some that were more severe, and some that were less. But often it's the case that a city boy or girl will move to the countryside, often because they're promised goods. They're young, and they're promised with this better life by people higher up the drug chain. So it was key for me, because I didn't really know much about it, and in order to sort of fully understand it, yeah, I had to really sort of look at real life cases in order to sort of reflect that onto the case that we were dealing with, and it was really interesting because it's just not talked about enough, and what this show does is it illuminates county lines in a very special way, and yeah, you really sort of you see how it works, and you see how there's a high chain of command, and it is the case that young people, often between the ages of 14 to 18, are manipulated because they don't know any better, and they're promised chains and shoes and all these commodities, and that thing like a better life, and it's not the case, and they get trapped in it. Yeah.
And oh my God, having the chance to work with Martin Clunes, I mean, I actually got to talk to him the other day, and he was saying that I grew up watching like Men Behaving Badly, and he was like, "Oh, that's
Yeah.
not wasn't very good parenting," but I've watched him on TV, my whole life, and he
Yeah.
does this great combination, doesn't he, of the comedy, but also the drama, and a lot of his roles do kind of sit on that borderline. I mean, what was it like having him play your father as Nathan? And, did you get to spend a lot of time, I guess, like rehearsing to kind of get into that father-son role? What was it like working opposite him?
It was just the best, honestly. Like apart from being an incredible actor, like you say, in the drama comedy, he's just a lovely person. He's got a great heart, a great soul, and it's so calm. Coming onto set and just working with him, and being with him, and spending time with him. We kind of felt quite easy that father-son relationship came because we just enjoyed each other's company, and we as much as I learned from him, we learned things from each other, and we sort of learned things about each other that would help our scenario and our relationship between father and son. And we did have a little bit of rehearsal time before to sort of go through certain key scenes, and talk about our relationship and where we were at, because we've obviously just lost my mother and his wife, and really talked about what it would be like having two men in the house, really. It's often the case that men don't really talk about how they feel sometimes, and they sort of they try and pave over what's happened and won't open up about how they feel. So almost like at the beginning of the show, two ships in the night, you know, kind of both getting on with it. But I'm honestly so lucky to have worked with Martin. He is the best on and off screen. He's such a joy, and yeah, really, really, really just grateful that I've had the chance to learn from him and see what he can do, because he's just, yeah, he's great, and he's hilarious in real life as well. He's so funny. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In the sort of aspect of like living and working on this farm, because he does that anyway, that all came naturally to him. But was that something you had to like maybe kind of learn more or learn from him, let's say, to know what that kind of life would be like?
Definitely, yeah. He's amazing. You know, I think he has something like 12 or something ridiculous, like 10 horses, and he has like, this cattle and everything. So he probably knows what that farm life's about. But I'm a city boy, so I sort of do you know what? I've never actually been to Wales. I've spent time in countryside, but never been to Wales. But yeah, definitely learned a few things. You know, we'd in between scenes and sort of whilst we were setting up, he talked to me about like you know his horses and how he has his tractors and he likes sitting on them, you know, stuff like that. And there was one scene when we had to tie up a lead rope. That sounds kind of simple, but it's not. Like you literally, you have to wrap it around and then wrap it around again, and it's like really confusing. But Martin did it as if he's done it for years, and he was like, "Right, you've got to do this in about 2 minutes." So we sort of practiced it, and then yeah. But it's beautiful because there's a couple of nice scenes between Johnny and Nathan where they're just with the horses. And it's really beautiful because one of the horses, in a way, reflects their mother. That was their mother. So my mother and Nathan's wife. That was her horse. And so there's a couple of beautiful scenes with just the horse and Nathan. And yeah, it was just amazing to see how comfortable he is with these animals and just this is his life almost. Like he is a farmer at heart.
I've actually only managed to watch the first episode, but I'm like really on the edge of my seat to see what happens next. And I can obviously feel that it's going to go to some really dark places and it is quite gritty. Along the way, were there some scenes that were really hard to pull off? You know, like were there some things that were most challenging, or when you watch it back now, that you're most intrigued for people to see?
It's a pretty gritty show. So a lot of what we did was me and Martin used to joke there weren't often scenes where we would have a lot, you know, where our characters would be really enjoying themselves. So when you find those moments, it was quite beautiful because they were often hard to come by, which isn't to say that it's a completely gloomy show. It's like like you say, it gets you on the edge of your seat. And there were a couple of scenes where when we were shooting them, you sort of you finish at the end of the day and you're like, wow, that was genuinely quite took a toll, because it's tough subject content, you know, involving and again I can't really say too much, but it's in a way abuse and kind of we see this drug dealer kind of try and abuse someone else, and it's just it's horrible and very complicated. So definitely there were lots of scenes, so you can expect some quite graphic stuff, but it's all to prove a message, and at the end of those days you have to separate yourself in your mind from what you were doing and step back, and so lots of tough scenes.
And in terms of what people can take away, I guess it is just kind of shining a light on that this is going on, and also that maybe Johnny isn't necessarily what people might stereotypically have in mind of the kind of young lad that would be co-opted into this situation. Like he's come from kind of a middle class family, and he's not necessarily vulnerable, let's say, in some ways that other kids might be, but he is still open to being kind of taken in by this world for various reasons. So I guess it's kind of, hopefully people can realize that anyone can be a threat of this, or particularly young men, with social media and things like this. And it's something that we all need to be more aware of.
I mean, like you say, with social media, everyone is exposed to so much content and so much information these days. So certainly, I mean, generally it is people that are less fortunate and that don't really have a lot that are brought into this and sort of coerced into this system. But that's why it's interesting in this show, because like you say, it's someone who comes from a relatively decent background. They're not mega rich, but they aren't struggling really. Middle class, sort of, they live on a farm, quite separated from everyone else. And so that's why it is quite interesting, because you wouldn't think Johnny is the prime suspect. And so when he does fall into this, it's it's confusing, and you're like, well, how has he been tricked into it? But it just shows that it can happen to anyone, and it's a system that it's hard to tackle because it's complex and it's vast and it's happening everywhere. There's not just one place where it is the hotspot. It's a lot of small communities across the UK. Yeah, which is shocking when you hear the stats of how many people are actually affected by it. It's crazy. It is. It's terrifying. And Out There, like I say, illuminates this to people, and it's not talked about enough. It's not a thing that people are really informed on.
In terms of, seeing how this fits in with your broader career, I mean, I guess, I have to mention your father growing up, I mean, with what was such an incredible talent, and again, someone that we've all grown up watching, whether Lord of the Rings or so many of the other things that he's done, which must have kind of really prepared you in so many amazing ways to also have a career in film and television. So what has that been like, and what do you hope to do next?
Yeah, I mean, so all my family act, and we always say this all the time. We're so lucky that we can do it as well. Sort of always in our family just enjoyed telling stories and being other people, I suppose, and sort of stepping into someone else's shoes. And as a family, we like to sit down and watch film and television, and it's something within our family that we enjoy. And we're lucky. I'm lucky that I get to do it, as a career, and there's nothing else that I'd rather do. But in terms of what's next, I've just wrapped on a project that was shooting up in Newcastle, and I'm currently filming something now for BBC. I can't say too much on them, unfortunately, but that they're going to be crackers as well, and to expect them shortly. So yeah.
And in terms of your bucket list, are there, is there like a director you'd love to work with, a genre you'd love to try? Will you work with your dad? You don't know.
I've worked with them a bit before, actually, on a film called Mowgli, which is the Jungle Book, on Netflix, and that was interesting because I was doing like a motion capture character, and I remember I was very young, I was about 11 years old, and he was directing me, and he go, right, let's do another take, and we do like 12, 13 takes, and I was like, Dad, come on. But yeah, I'd definitely like to work with them again. And oh god, I always get asked this, if there's like a one role, or like, and I think it's hard to say. This is what I enjoy about, if I get an audition through or something like that, and I genuinely, my eyes are glued to it, and I'm like, wow, this is an amazing character. For me, it's that. I think it would be easy for me to sit here and say, oh, I'd like to play Spider-Man, or Batman, but I honestly think if a script was to sort of appear, and sort of, it would be, I don't know, yeah, there isn't one role that I'd like to do a war film, actually, like a maybe a First World War film, or an underdog story, or a role in which I'd have to massively change my appearance. You see the likes of like Christian Bale, who go through these amazing transformations. For me in my career, I'd love to do something like that, where you're so far from yourself. I'm in so much awe of those guys, because it's quite frankly amazing. Yeah,
they're always looking for a new James Bond, so
that's true. And look, I'm always here. I'd love to play James Bond. That would be great. 007. Yeah, definitely.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me.
Thank you.
Great for everyone to see out there. And best of luck with what you do next. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely talking to you.